Welcome everyone to this evening's program. Without further ado, Rabbi Muller will introduce the program.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to this evening's program. It's entitled Navigating the Challenges of Parenting Your Child with ADHD. My name is Avraham Shimon Muller. I'm a parent and educator and the superintendent of the Associated Talmud Torahs of Chicago. It's the umbrella organization of Chicago's Jewish day schools. While our main focus is promoting excellence in education and supporting students with needs, we are delighted to partner with No Shame on You for this evening's program, as it helps our community's parents partner successfully in the important endeavor of chinuch, the education and preparation of the next generation. Founded in November 2014, No Shame on You is a nonprofit organization dedicated to eliminating the stigma associated with mental health conditions and to raising awareness about the mental health needs in the Jewish community and beyond. No Shame on You's goal is for people who need the help to be comfortable to seek it, and for family members and friends to know how to support them during these challenges, thereby saving lives and improving their quality of life. No Shame on You achieves its mission through outreach programs, education presentations, workshops, daily online tools and resources, blog, podcasts, and more. Since the pandemic started, No Shame on You is proud to have offered over 225 free virtual programs, and it has shared a vast array of resources and information on its 125K social media. A link to the website is available in the Zoom chat. I would like to acknowledge and thank No Shame on You's generous funders, including the Jewish United Fund, Jewish Women's Foundation, Crown Family Philanthropies, who support this important work. And now for a bit of housekeeping. Please keep your sound on mute to avoid feedback. Written questions will be taken during and at the end of the presentation via the chat. This can also be done privately by selecting Wendy NSOU in the chat. Wendy will also be moderating the question and answer at the end of the program. And now I would like to introduce this evening's speaker, Dr. Nachi Felt. Dr. Felt is an ADHD specialist, an educator, and motivational speaker. His engaging presentations on the subject are based on his personal experiences overcoming the challenges of ADHD, and it has made him a sought-after presenter on this topic. Dr. Felt is the clinical director of ADHDdoctor.org. He has lectured at Yale University School of Medicine. He teaches counseling at New York University and provides therapy for students at the Yeshiva University Counseling Center. Please welcome Dr. Felt.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Muller. Alrighty, so let's get the program started. We're going to start off with sharing my screen, so bear with me. And here we go. Alrighty, so I know that Rabbi Muller already mentioned some of the housekeeping. I'm just going to do it because I think that this little acronym I came up with in the car was really cute. Monkey, right? So MUNQ. So mute, please mute yourself. Update your name. This one's a little bit fun, right? So you can put in your Zoom name, your name, and the ages of your children. This way I could kind of get a sense of the ages and demographics that we're kind of addressing together tonight. Notes, please take notes. It's good stuff, believe me. And I think you'll be happy that you did. A lot of stuff will also move very quickly. So if you have a question on something I said, you could kind of note for yourself where you had a problem with something I said, and we can clarify that later. And just pop them in the chat, and hopefully Wendy will organize and we'll have enough time for her to present those at the end. All right, so welcome aboard, and let's get this party started. So, right, our goal for tonight is one single goal, which is obviously going to break down into a few micro goals. So the first is obviously that we want to all here because it's important for us to understand what's going on in really the people that we love with ADHD. It's not only children. Sometimes, if it's our children, that could be an indication that it could be from one of the parents, as ADHD is more than 60% of the time genetic. So it's, I think, more than how ADHD manifests itself in our children as much as how it manifests itself in the people we love. So this is the outline for tonight. We're going to first start off with my story as a child with ADHD so that it could kind of give you a little bit of an insight into what it's like having ADHD. We're going to talk about some of the science behind ADHD to give you a deeper understanding of it and hopefully a little bit more relief to recognize where things are coming from. We're going to kind of review them all so that you could see it come together, and then we're going to come out with these practical applications of how to make your life and the life of those that you love better based off of the information that we're going to share tonight. And then, obviously, if there are any questions, you could bring them up at the end, and I'm more than happy to clarify. Even after this ends, I'll leave my info for everyone so that you can grab me whenever it's convenient for you. All right, so this is where it starts. Yeah, when I was, I think as early as 6 is when I first remember the feelings of that something's different, that something was off. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know why, but I did know that it wasn't what everyone else was going through. It seemed like I was the only one who was constantly getting in trouble. I was the only one who the teacher always had to like point out or ask or punish or reward. It was always I was always the one who was getting, kicked out of class, asked to leave, take a break, and like all of these different like I don't know, I guess unique experiences tailored just for me. And I guess I was thankfully too young to realize the full extent of what it was. But I did recognize that it was weird that I was moving from school to school, and that my parents had to kind of shift all of our siblings from school because they didn't want my siblings to kind of have to go through a school with teachers who had me. I was the oldest. They'd be like, oh God, another Felt. He's probably, horrible like his older brother. So, which they're not. My younger brothers are really sweet. They're very gentle. They're not like me. And so it kind of became this process where I kind of was finding myself being thrown around, well, and thrown out, and I never really knew why. Meaning at home, it was a complete and total like chaos for me. I didn't know what to do, where to go, what was happening, who or what I was supposed to, like, I didn't know, for instance, like where I kept my stuff, right? Now, my parents aren't stupid, right? So they had a set place where, let's say, my knapsack was supposed to be. I think it was next to the radiator, right? Or where, I don't know, like what time dinner is and stuff like that. And I just, if it wasn't like clearly established and on a big board with flashing lights, I really had no idea, right? And I would forget day to day. I remember always asking someone what classroom we're in. Which would make sense, like when, by the time I moved to California and like we would go to different classes, but when I was growing up in New York, it was like a classic, like you sit in a homeroom and that was it. So I don't know, it was just weird. Like I never knew what time class was. It's the same time every day, right? I just never knew these things, and I was wondering why, like what was going on? Why was I always getting in trouble? Why was I always finding myself in the principal's office, swinging my feet, like kind of looking around and trying to see if there are any more stains in the carpet than last time. And I think a very like poignant memory for me was seeing my parents' frustration. Yeah, that part was I think the worst. I would hear them at night discussing me and like, what are we gonna do? Or I just got another call from the teacher. And I would sit on the top of the stairs just listening. I could never fall asleep, obviously, right? So I'd be up all night, and I would just listen, and those parts were very painful to hear those conversations. Just knowing that I was a source of so much grief for my parents was very difficult for me to handle, but I didn't really know how to fix it, why I did it, what was wrong, how to stop it. I didn't know how to be better. And so this process would kind of play out again and again, and every couple of months and every new school. And it was just very confusing for me to know these feelings and to hear what my parents were saying. And I think my parents were capable folk. I mean, they were trying their best. I think my father even wrote his thesis on ADHD, and like the guy still struggled to manage me. Like it clearly wasn't so easy. And I remember as a child feeling the blame, like feeling like that was my fault. so let's move on to the next part. All right. So that was this cool thing. I obviously spent way too much time making this and trying to make it look exactly like the Star Wars theme. So, all right, I did the best I could, right? All right, so this is a review of what I felt like. For me, it was constantly feeling these feelings. I was constantly out of control. I didn't know what I was doing or why, right? So like I would be looking for things. I'd be impulsively trying to do this or trying to figure out how to break that and put it back together in a different way. I was very artistic, and I would draw a lot and create things, and I loved creating things. Sometimes things that weren't meant to be created, and I remember being confused also, just by the fact that it seemed like the things I thought was good were never really appreciated the same way I did, and confused what my parents wanted for me, what my siblings wanted for me, what my school wanted for me. I would basically just hide in the basement building Lego sets. I don't know if that's still a thing now, if they have toys that aren't digital now, but I would just immerse myself in that world of Lego where I could just kind of, looking back at it now as a psychologist, I recognize that what I was doing was creating control for myself, because my Lego cities I built with my hands. I made it. It was mine. I controlled it. And I felt like I could have some sort of control of those worlds that I kind of created with my hands and was concrete and real and tangible, as opposed to the rest of my life, which wasn't. It was always just very confusing and very like, there are these vague rules and expectations that I clearly never knew and wasn't doing right. And I was always be frustrated at myself that I couldn't do it. And I frustrated others, and everyone was frustrated with me. I felt like no one else really knew what I was going through, and I was basically all alone. That part really sucked. And I guess because it was 20 years ago, so like it wasn't the same like in vogue diagnosis that it is now. But I doubt the experience is that much better now. Maybe it's not as alone, but it still would most likely be manifested with a lot of these feelings. No matter the age, I felt this from when I was 6 through high school, post high school, into base medrash and like undergrad. I think the first time I thought I was smart was I was 21, 22. Yeah, that's the first time I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually smart. And it took a good decade for me to prove to myself that, yeah, I am smart. I am capable. I am someone who could do things. I am competent. But it was kind of making up for a lifetime of always feeling, incompetent. So here's some of the science to try to understand what was going on in little Nachi and what's going on in those that we love that also struggle with ADHD. So this, I think, is a beautiful snippet from Russell Barkley. Russell Barkley had ADHD also. He dedicated his life to understanding the science of ADHD. Till he came around, it was very, very, very rare and very I guess, like, very unclear what was going on. It was always called either like mild brain retardation or immaturity, which both, by the way, are true clinically, meaning the brain is a little bit developmentally delayed, and the brain does mature much slower. It's a good like 2 to 4 year lag behind everyone else, behind everyone else's brain. So let's just, I hate reading off of PowerPoints, but this one's, and many of the quotes I'm going to have here are kind of worth it. So ADHD is a behavioral inhibition, right? And I think the most important part here and the key is this lack of governance over time, meaning we can't see time properly or track time properly, right? So since we're unable to connect our thoughts to the action because we're not able to think of the thought in time, right? And therefore we can't know what we need to know before we do what we do, or know the past or anticipate the future in the present. So then we're kind of detached from the moment, which leads us to the next quote, which is really my quote that I stole from a bunch of places and put together, which is that those of us with ADHD are less capable of focusing on the future, right? Again, because I can't track time the same way. And it's limited to maximizing the moment, because that is my reality. My reality is the moment. So those of us with ADHD kind of are living in the moment, constantly. It's not really even that much of a choice. It's just the way our brain has not developed yet. So how can we help, right? So obviously the first thing is reducing the distance of time. I think that this step is so important because it helps remind us as parents, us as helpers, that it's a time problem. It's almost calming to try to reduce the time because, first of all, it obviously makes things much more effective, right? Like, how effective is the idea? Well, if you don't clean up your room, then I'm not gonna get you a bounce house on your birthday, which is in 7 months. Come on, right? If you don't wake up on time, you're gonna miss the bus. That's what, in 30 minutes, right? That's just, it doesn't, like, that time doesn't, okay, maybe I'll feel an impetus to maybe get out of bed, maybe, right? But not really, because I don't feel that same urgency that everyone else feels, right? I don't feel the same sense of time, or the bus is almost here, right? I don't feel it. If I don't feel it, then I can't be motivated to move the same way that someone who does feel it would, right? It's almost natural when we sense the urgency, right? We physiologically are motivated and our body is aroused and activated to move. But if I'm not feeling, if I don't see the urgency, my body's not going to respond that way because it doesn't see the same urgency, right? I think that the simplicity of it is something that's very helpful for so many people because it just reminds you that it's a lack of accurate governance of time. That's what it is. It's a time governance problem. Alrighty, so back to here. I feel like it's important before we get back to just talk about, I think, just our role as parents. And I think that this theme is going to go through the rest of the presentation, which is our goal as parents is really to prepare our children to launch, right? Almost like we're NASA, right? We are here, we train them as astronauts to go out into the great beyond, right? And to be independently capable of successfully navigating that great beyond, right? And so that is our goal, whether it's that we're parents, we're teachers, we're friends, we're spouses, that's our goal, right? It's to empower this person, right, to independently function, to prepare them for launch. So part of that, right, one way to help them, right, is obviously to reduce the distance of time. But when we view it in this context of that I'm preparing them for launches, at a certain point, meaning as our children get older, it's important for us to collaborate with them and help them start reducing that distance of time themselves. Again, reducing the distance of time, it can be done in so many ways. It could be that you could manufacture urgency, right, by making something that like, oh, let's get it done right now. Or could we get, right, taking a micro step, right? Instead of get dressed and get ready for the bus, say, all right, could you get your shoes on? All right, so there's the shoebox. Let's go to the shoebox. See how I just shrunk that instead of being a 20-minute ordeal to a 10-second ordeal, right? Get the shoes from the shoebox, right? It's 5 seconds, right? Just go get the shoes, right? So that idea, but we not only want to do that as parents and as directors, but also to empower our children that they can start doing it themselves, meaning help them start breaking down time and tasks into manageable bite-sized pieces so that they could kind of see it much closer together. They could reduce it. So help them make their own kind of time reduction, right? So they could come up with their own incentive if they get something done quickly, to kind of help them generate the importance of something and of breaking that down again to micro tasks so that it's much smaller to do. But again, this goes from when they're really little and they're unable to do it independently. So then we do the time reduction for them. And as they get older, right, we scaffold the amount of how much we kind of put that on them. And first, we obviously guide them and we show them how, we model it and do it with them and encourage them, right? All of Vygotsky's steps, right? The idea of scaffolding and building on skills, right? We do that together with them so that they can launch on their own, right? And that when they get to high school, they could sit down and they can make their own list, right? Because they know that they're not going to come on time because then you might get a bunch of lates. And if you get more than 10 lates, then you have to sit detention. And if you have to sit and you get more than 3 detentions, then you get suspended. If you get 3 suspensions, then you drop a letter grade in 9th grade, right? That's not going to do anything for them. So kind of working with them to help them make their own time reduction, right, will empower them to start doing this on their own so that they can be independent. And also, about time, right? We don't want to be doing this forever. All right, so this one's actually, I kind of added to it, but at NYU we have this program, right, the Child Study Center, where they've developed the system called Prompt, Monitor, Praise, and Reward. So I add plan. That's my addition, and I'm going to tell you why. Planning is really the key for effective parenting. If you think about it, effective parenting is really efficient planning. Let's just go back to this the bus example, right? Clearly you could tell that I'm the one who gets the kids out to the bus, right? So I found that it would constantly be like this tremendous source of stress, right? I wake them up and have to rush to get them ready while I'm still trying to make my coffee and get dressed and get what I have to get done and prep for going to school, make sure I have my IDs and all the stuff that I need to do to go to work, right? And then I just realized it was craziness. And there's so many times where I'm like rushing them out to the bus, right? And like there's only so many times I could hear my 3-year-old say, "Daddy, you're squeezing my hand too hard. Right? Are you mad at me?" Like it broke my heart, right? That's ridiculous, right? So I realized I just need to plan this a little bit better, right? So that means like setting up clothing the night before, making sure their shoes are there first. They can't eat breakfast till they eat their shoes. That came out weird. They can't eat breakfast until they have their shoes on, right? This way, if she's in the middle of eating and the bus comes, then I could rush her out. Otherwise, it would be her in the middle of eating, me getting all agitated and frustrated that I'm keeping the bus waiting and maybe they're just going to leave without her and I have to go run and find their shoe, but she left the other one under the couch and she thinks that the other one's in the bathroom. I don't know which bathroom. Where am I going to go? How am I going to get it? And it's just craziness. But if I plan it out beforehand, right, I now have the ability to be a much more calm parent, to be the parent I want to be, right? So that would take me getting up a little bit early. Now, for people who are normal and don't have ADHD, maybe they could just get up 10 minutes earlier. For me, it means I have to get up like a good half hour earlier. Again, I do have ADHD, and in the morning till I'm medicated, it takes time. So, but that idea of planning, right? That planning is really the key to effective parenting, right? So that's the planning part, right? That I'm adding, and then from the NYU Child Study Center, right? This idea of prompt, right? Which makes sense. It's a fancy way of saying like point them in the direction of what they need to do, right? Let them know this is what you have to do and make it very clear, right? This is their goals. This is what you got to do. This is the morning routine, and that's consistent. We're going to get to that in the later slide, right? But to prompt them, Joey, did you get your shoes on, right? Tammy, where's your dress, right? So prompt. Now monitor, make sure that they're doing it, right? So the child with ADHD may like get distracted by something or space out about something or be worried about something else and therefore not notice or not hear or not sense, remember, the urgency of what's going on. So therefore we have to monitor, right? Monitor our children and their progress. And then if need be, constantly prompt again, more prompts. Praise, meaning when they are going on task, to praise that behavior, to provide that positive reinforcement, right? To praise them and to kind of rebuild their self-esteem, which already feels like they're, losers and broken and incapable of being normal like everyone else, but to praise them, a little bit of praise, never hurt anyone, and a lot could hopefully make them healthy, right? Too much is bad, right? And then reward, right? So the idea of reward it goes back to the same thing as the time reduction, meaning the reward, right, could be anything. It could be like for us in our house, the way we do it is only if you're just before 7:30 do you get to pick out an extra snack from the snack bag, right? Otherwise you're stuck with whatever healthy food, right? So there's the reward, right? So there's the reward if they get it done by a certain time. So we manufactured urgency because now they have the sense of, oh, I want to get it, right? And then I'll remind them it's 7:19, right? It's 7:21, 7:27, right? And then I'll prompt them what they still need. It looks like you still need your shoes. Oh, do you need me to make a pony, right? And that kind of thing. Like the idea of providing the reward not only does it manufacture urgency, right? Which again, right? Time reduction, but it reinforces the praise. It reinforces the sense of competence that they could and do accomplish things, that they get things done. Because after all, they do get some stuff right. And because there's so much that they're doing wrong and there's so much that they're getting negative feedback for, it's so important to concretize when they get it right. And reward does that. It doesn't have to be like a remote control Jeep. It doesn't have to be that, right? It just, the idea of reward, it could even be like a good job, right? Like a positive comment from a parent, a smile, right? We don't have to spoil them, right? It just has to be a reward. So the power of positive feedback, right? So as I just mentioned earlier, right? So this idea of there's this constant negative feedback that those of us with ADHD are constantly giving ourselves. We're always beating ourselves up because we always feel confused. We always feel like we're letting people down, like we're failing. So I know that NYU pushes 10 positive feedback to every 1 negative feedback. Ari Tuckman, the ADHD expert I work with, recommends 3 positive reinforcements to every negative reinforcement. And I found that one of the commentaries on the Torah, on the Chumash, right? Rashi is a commentary on the bottom of every single, biblical, at least Jewish biblical sefer, right? So on the bottom, there's a Rashi by the Sarsadibris, which the 10 Commandments, where Rashi explains that God has this system where he pays back, right, 2,000 generations of good, right? So I think it was 2 generations of bad, right? Meaning the idea that God gives 500 good to 1 bad. So listen, those of you who are trying to be Masai Yagia Masai, right? And how I want to be like Hashem, Afu Racham, Avatar Racham, I want to be like God. And I want to be religious and act like God. So you got a pretty high standard, right? But at least, right, you could do the NYU standard, right, which is the 10 to 1, or you could do 3 to 1. But the point is to always try to do more good, more positive than bad. Believe me, we're giving ourselves enough negative feedback. We don't need more. Okay, now part of this I think is important for us, just practical tips as parents, is to pick our battles, right? We don't want to be fighting everything, right? Not even for the kids' sake, for our own mental health, right? We don't want to be fighting every single time, every single thing. Instead, part of that planning, right? That effective parenting is efficient planning. Part of that planning should be in your head, you and your spouse plan out, right? Or you on your own, figure out, okay, so what is important to me, right? If my kid wants to wear a costume to school, is that really what I want to fight about? So he dressed up as a fireman. Okay. Right? Or he decided that he wants to not, he wants to have that weird haircut. So his friends will make fun of him and then he'll learn not to have that, right? Or if they don't make fun of him, so then why would I get into, like, if there was no social blowback, then why would I get into a fight with him about it, right? Now, certain things, like my kid doesn't want to shower, well, that's a fight that, that there's certain like things that we do have to fight about, right? So like the idea of picking our battles will just make it easier for ourselves to just be so much more capable of being the parent we want to be, right? And having enough energy and enough calm in ourselves that we don't feel overwhelmed by, oh my God, everything's a battle, right? Because we're able to kind of, just focus on the things that we've already pre-planned are important to us, right? And then again, not only do we focus on the results, but also on the process. Meaning, let's go back to my getting the kids out on time for the bus, right? So obviously, if I'm just focused on the results, I get them there on time. It may mean that I squeeze her hand and drag her all across the street as she's kicking and screaming, right? But I get the results. She's there on time. But we have to plan out the process. Is that the process I want? Is that the parent I want to be? Is that the experience I want to be giving my children? And if it's not, what can I do to curate the environment, to manipulate the environment so that it's easier for me to be the parent I want to be, so that I could allow my child to grow in the way that I think is best for them, in a calm, loving, and all of the ways that we find valuable to ourselves. And not to be afraid of incentives, right? Incentives is a great thing, not just to encourage behavior, but like we said before in the last slide, to concretize that sense of accomplishment, that sense of achievement. Meaning the prize isn't necessarily just to get them to do something, right? Meaning bribe them, whatever it is that you're doing, right? So it's not just a bribe, you're getting more than that out of it, right? Is that you're rewarding them, and that concretizes that sense of accomplishment. I know my parents gave me Lego sets as they were incentives for, like, I think getting the weekly behavior checklist filled out. So again, see how that was a time reduction? Instead of it being a month till I get the report card in 3 months, 6 months, right? They did it by week, right? So then the teacher would try to do it by day, right? She would try to make it, and then the good teachers would do it by class, and then sometimes even by hour. Again, they just reduced the time for me. So the Lego sets, to me, represented so much more than an opportunity for me to feel like calm and control, but it represented my own sense of competence. To have this huge Lego city represented my accomplishment, that my capacity, I could do something. I am capable. And having that tangible reminder of success could be so valuable for our children. definitely worth the $10, right? So, right, this I think is the three major themes, right? So if you're gonna walk out with anything, it should be these three major themes. I try to make it cute with the three C's, which is clarity, collaboration, and consistency, right? So remember, I was talking about it as a kid, right? That because of my deficit in time management, of being able to govern time and connect my knowledge to the present now, right? So I constantly was confused. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Things that everyone else did, I didn't know. So it means that with children with ADHD need so much more clarity. They need it to be so much more clear and spelled out for them. It could be annoying, but again, if we plan it out, right, it won't be that bad. We could build it into systems. We could have signs up, like on the door of the bedroom, right? Nachi, is your homework in your knapsack? Like a big sign. But the point is like to have as much clarity as possible for what the roles, goals, and expectations are for this child. So that's number one, is clarity, right? Even like a simple thing like sitting at the table for dinner. Spell that out, right? You could sit from this time to this time, right? You'd have to sit for at least 5 minutes, right? Eat food, right? And then you can go. If you eat 4 bites of protein, 3 bites of carbs, and 4 veggies, then you could leave, right? Again, that's clear, right? Again, but try to keep that consistent, right? That's the next thing. You want it to be the same thing. If it's arbitrary, then you have to be even more clear, obviously. But the consistency and the clarity kind of work hand in hand. If you make it more consistent, then you can kind of get away with less clarity, right? And the less consistent it is, the much more clarity it's going to require in order for the child with ADHD to kind of be more focused on it. And this is even for like an adult child, right? Like there has to be clear expectations of what you're going to be doing, right? We want you to be getting a job. That doesn't mean just like randomly talking to people when you're at a wedding, right? It means that you're filling out 2 applications a day on LinkedIn or on Indeed, right? 2 applications a day. Let's just make it clear. It's consistent, just 2, right? And then collaboration, I think it is important no matter what age. Obviously, if you have a college age child, right, to work with them to like kind of, okay, let's make up these goals together. What are your goals and how do we want to accomplish them? How could we reduce the time together? How could we make it more clear? How could we make it more consistent? How could we make it easier for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish? So obviously we would do that with a college age child, right? But I even highly recommend doing it with the younger children. Kids are smarter than they look. They just are, right? They pick up a lot, they know a lot, and they are capable. If we do collaborate with them, not only does it give them a sense of agency, not only does it give them the sense of empowerment that I believe in you, I think you could do this, but it also gets buy-in. Buy-in is so important. We know it's important in therapy. We know it's important in business, right? Buy-in, 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 right? The collaboration allows them to become part of the team. We're all on the same team here. We want the child to be happy, successful, and independently capable, right? And they also want that. They don't want to feel like a loser. They don't want to constantly be told what to do. They don't want to feel like they're just complete and total broken, inadequate, incompetent pieces of garbage who can never get anything right no matter what they do, right? So allowing them to collaborate with you gives them back that sense of control, that sense of autonomy that they could do something, they are capable. And you know what? As parents, it's teaching them how to do these processes, right? We can kind of hand off the baton to them and do this together with them. We could collaborate and show them these tools and show them these tricks so that they could start being capable of directing the story of their own life, right? And isn't that our goal? We don't want to be writing their story forever. So let's just review it, right? So how does ADHD hurt, right? So the way the ADHD hurts is obvious. It's the ways that kind of come out from not being able to properly govern time. Now, this happens not just in hyperactive. Hyperactive means that then they'll act impulsively to do something like more proactive, right? But this is also the inattentive type. They're unable to kind of like choose their behavior, right? To use a more religious term, right? They have compromised bechira. Their ability to choose is much more limited. Remember that quote in the beginning, right? That their ability to act is limited. They're limited to maximizing the moment. That's it, right? They don't really have that choice, the same choice as everyone else. And so therefore they're less capable of controlling their behavior, of inhibiting the things that they're not supposed to do. It just happens, and then they're not able to sense, oh, if I do that, I'll get in trouble for it, right? Unless it's right away, right? Unless we did a time reduction, but we'll get to that in the next slide, right? Executive dysfunction. So executive dysfunction kind of covers all of these things, and that's really the key word. If you're gonna like Google stuff on your own after this, which please do, right? Look up executive functioning skills. That's the key for their success. In my practice, what I constantly work on, and this is not just limited to ADHD, it also comes from depression, anxiety, bipolar, certain kinds of traumatic brain injuries, right? There will be executive functioning deficits, right? Across many different spectrums of mental health issues, right? Obviously with ADHD. But the idea is that there's so much out there. Like for instance, with autism spectrum disorder, right? There's so many resources there to help develop executive functioning. And it's such a important part. It's the control tower of our life. If you think about it, it's almost like the movie director, right? Who kind of says, okay, this is how we envision the scene. This is what we have to do and where we have to be to do it. Okay, shoot, right? Lights, camera, action, right? Oh, cut, stop, let's fix that, right? That's the executive functioning part of the brain. And if they're unable to create that vision and they don't know where to put the people and where to have the set and where to put the props, they're not able to get the same scenes that everyone else just kind of does effortlessly. And that brings us down to the governance of time, right? Which is they're not capable of seeing time the same way everyone else is. Getting mad at them is not going to help them all of a sudden track time more accurately. So how can we help? So we spoke about this, right? The idea of reducing the distance of time, right? So in the context of collaboration, right, helping them reduce the distance of time, I think is important. That also kind of gives us the sense of why rewarding is so important, why prompting and monitoring is so important, because they're not seeing it, right? They're not seeing the time the same way we are. So therefore, well, people without ADHD would, right? So the idea of reducing the time, manufacturing urgency, being able to kind of help bridge that gap is so helpful. It's a disability that they're not able to do it like everyone else is. That's it. It's not like well, if he really cared, he's still locked in to the moment. He's only just super motivated because he's in the moment. He doesn't see the time then either, right? I remember as a child, I would play video games. I could go for like 3 days without food and water. I could probably still do that actually. Right? It's just, I don't see time. I don't see it the same way. Now, when I was in yeshiva, when I was in college, I could learn for hours and hours on end, right? Oh, the great, I was such a great student, so studious. Yeah, but it was a deficit that turned out well, like it kind of worked out well for me. But like that doesn't necessarily mean that, that I could do it. It's like the difference between a process and an outcome, right? So we spoke about before the idea of like focusing not just on the outcome, but also the process, right? So just because the example that Dr. Tuckman gives is kind of funny. I have a different one, but I'll give his because he's the bigger expert, which is he says, let's say he goes to a bar and he gets drunk, right? He starts and he drinks and he figures, I think I could do this. Let me drive home. And he drives home. And he gets home and his wife starts yelling at him. What are you doing? How can you drive drunk? So what's your problem? I got home safe. So the result was great. The outcome was great, but the process is not great. It doesn't make the process good. So just because there are some times that children with ADHD could focus and could do things and could be very motivated and could do it, doesn't necessarily mean that they're always capable of doing it, right? Maybe the outcome worked out, right? But it doesn't necessarily have any accurate indication that the process works, right? So, and that's why it's so important for us to plan, to curate and manipulate the environment to be as conducive for the success of our child as possible. That's our job. And you know what? The planning is really for us. Because we could have the outcome, the result of getting the kids to school on time. We could have the result of getting them to bed on time. But at what cost, right? How much of our sanity are we willing to sacrifice? But if we could plan it out, so then we could kind of create a culture, an environment, and at least so much of an easier experience for ourselves as parents, so that our job is easier and that then we could focus on that which we feel to be most important, right? And then the idea of monitoring, which is just to take into account their deficit, praising them to reinforce the behavior, and to reward, which is to concretize their success, to concretize their competence, that they could do stuff, and that you as a parent believe in them, you love them, and you think that they could do it. Because they know you love them. Well, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we doubt it. But what's more important than that is we need to know that you think we're capable, which brings us to the positive feedback and the collaboration, right? The idea of collaborating with them, I think, is so empowering, not just for us as parents, and but for the child again, and from all different age ranges, right? From really young to really old, right? The idea of collaborating with them in order to help empower them to launch their own success, to launch their life, to be independent, is so important and could be done. Again, it takes some creativity for doing it for a 2-year-old. Well, all right, maybe let's start with 3, right? With a 3-year-old, right? But like it could work, right? Meaning you collaborate with them. Okay, so what do you want to do, right? What could you like? If you, I don't know, I'm not going to give a good example, but that idea, right? It could be done obviously in micro levels with a lot of creativity, and then being clear and consistent. It's just not fair, right? If we with ADHD can't track the time and can't sense what we need to do, no matter how many, like it's just not fair. We don't know what to do. Like, what do you mean by I told you yesterday? Yeah, but if it's not clearly there for me all the time, it's going to be very hard for me to do it. Wow, I guess we finished and on time. Not bad at all. All right, so there you go. This is my contact info and ways for that you could kind of get in touch with me. I think that I want to end with one last point, which is someone texted me earlier, like, oh, could I come to this even if I'm a teacher and it's not my kid? And my response was that, yeah, of course, if you think about it, teaching is just parenting in a classroom. But what I held myself back from saying was, and it's so much easier because it's not our kid. Parenting's hard. And it's even harder because it's our kids. Meaning there's just so much going on. There's so much emotional, just like interference and traffic that happens between us, our intentions as parents, and then what actually happens as parents. And I think that it's super important for us to just take a deep breath and to realize that it's not easy. It's not easy for them. It's not easy for us. And everyone knows that. And we're all just trying to do our best. And to not just forgive our kids for their mess ups, but also to forgive ourselves and to know that it's not easy, right? And we're going to mess up, and that's okay. And to try to give over that message to our kids as well, that they also are going to mess up. And when they do, that's okay, and they're okay.
Dr. Felt, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your honesty and some excellent advice. And it's just an honor to have you. So thank you on behalf of the entire audience. I'm Wendy Singer, and I'm the Director of Programming for No Shame on You. And I'm going to start with our audience Q&A. We did get some great questions, and they're still coming in. You can send me questions to my name, Wendy, No Shame on You, and we will do our best to get to everyone, but we may not get to them all. So one great question here is it recommended to educate children with ADHD about ADHD to help them understand themselves and their challenges? And if so, how can we do so without making them feel labeled or defined by it?
It's a great question. It's very thoughtful. That's a really good question. So I think that in general, knowledge is power. And just like we kind of feel more direction and clarity when we know what's going on, not just in our, like at work, right? But also as parents and as human beings, or even within relationships, right? Like, just like, why is everyone buying all these books on marriage, right? Like we want to know what to do, where to go, how to do it. So I think that it could be conveyed in a way that's compassionate and respectful if we ourselves are compassionate and respectful about it. Meaning if we don't view it as like, oh my God, you're broken and you're never going to get better, and oh my gosh, all the statistics of how much more likely it is for you to die in some risky behavior before you're 18, right? If we don't kind of like freak ourselves out and we're able to calm ourselves down and to kind of approach it from a place of compassion, respect, and really knowledge, like a power-based knowledge, and therefore an informed confidence, we could hopefully convey that over, right? The kids get the sense of what we're saying more than what we actually say, right? So if we can give over that informed confidence, I think they'll get that message too.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody asked, and I just want to make sure we don't miss this one. Would you mind giving your contact information again? Maybe you can pull up that screen for a moment while I ask the next question.
Yeah, let's do that. And share screen. There you go.
Thank you so much. And we can leave that up for a few minutes while we ask some additional questions. So another question is, what is your advice for best partnering with the schools? How do we work better with the school system?
Wow, tough question. That's a really tough question. That's a really tough question. I feel like the cop-out answer would be, well, it really depends on each school. It does. It does depend on each school, but it also depends on how we do it. I think that it could be very helpful to kind of use these same principles with the school. Meaning to be very clear with the school, with these are my child's needs, to be very consistent with the school, right? And to be very collaborative with the school. I think if we come in with this attitude of, hey, let's work together, this is what I know about my child, and you guys are the experts on education, but I'm the expert on my child, so let's kind of pool our knowledge to work together, then it could, again, do the same thing that we're trying to accomplish with our child, right? Which is to put us all on the same team. And I think that that's a huge step forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. I love this question. Can you tell us a little bit more about the connection between ADHD, depression, and anxiety? It seems that many kids with an ADHD diagnosis also have depression and anxiety. As parents, when should we become concerned with that?
I think it's a really great question. I'm a drop confused by be concerned about what that is. Remember, I do have ADHD, so I do need things to be super clear. But what I did notice in my work at Yeshiva University as a psychologist there is that when I get students, again, there I'm mostly dealing with like anxiety, right? So I'm noticing that if there's a very like uncanny similarity between the causes of that anxiety and depression, which is, if you think about it, right, all of the experiences I kind of shared with you in the beginning of my experience kind of makes sense that it would lead someone to have anxiety and to get depressed, right? They would like it, and combine that with the fact that their brain is constantly moving so quickly, right? Or is like it feels so out of control, and that there's nothing you can do, there's no way that you could control the direction of your life. It really does make sense that there's so many comorbidities and that they kind of come together. So I think that effective ADHD management will definitely be super helpful in attending to, and in addition to, as a supplemental, kind of support for the treatment of any, comorbid anxiety and or depression.
Okay. And to piggyback on that question, what are your thoughts and how do you advise patients on medication? What are your thoughts on it?
So my thoughts on medication are it's a nuanced simplicity, which is I'm super pro meds, but I'm super pro meds with a plan. Meaning there's no pill that's going to cure ADHD, right? I'm still on meds now, very happily so. And my wife can tell when I'm not. What do you mean? You're 31 years old with a Ph.D, smicha, professor at NYU. Come on, man, pull it together. My brain has a deficit. That's it. It will always have that deficit till the day I die. The difference between when I was 16, when I was 20, and now is that I'm a little bit better at managing it. And I hope that before I die, I'll be even better at managing it. But it comes down to effective executive functioning management. It's all about the management. And therefore, I like the phrase medication management, because to me, it's not the management of the medication so much as it's medication and management. So I think that medicine should only be given with a plan. right? When there's already a structure in place, when parents know what they're doing, they have plans, they're making it clear, they're making it consistent, they're making it collaborative. The home is one that has those three C's. Then I think medication can thrive and do really, really well. But even in the absence of that, if let's say, I don't know, let's say things are just really too tough at home, the medication will give your child a fighting chance. Think about it, right? Their brain is not the same. The medication helps level the playing field. It's the least we could do to help them out.
I love this question. I think you touched on this one for yourself, but maybe you can expand on it with your clientele and the people that you've seen. How do you feel ADHD can benefit people, and how can it be someone's superpower?
It's a great question. I used to refer to ADHD as my superpower because it gives me and those of us without the same, accurate time governance, the ability to always think out of the box because we're not defined by a box. We don't see boxes. Right now, that could be annoying if you have to live in a box, right? But seeing as I don't see the box, I'm able to kind of think much more creatively and have so much more fresh insight into life. And I mean, I think my wife likes it, but my life is just so much more exciting. Like, it's so much more real. It's so much more vivid. I'm bored with the regular, mundane, just monotony of being polite and regular lifeness of, oh, how are you doing? I'll always say how I'm actually doing, right? And most people aren't even listening to hear my response, right? But I'm just so raw. I'm so real. I'm so just present because I can't not be. That's just me. That's just my brain. My brain's like that. So I think it does kind of bring with it certain gifts, and the realness and the spontaneity of it kind of could be a tremendous asset. I'll be brutally, cynically honest. It does suck a lot of the times. It really does. And this is me viewing it as a superpower only after years of management and training and self-discipline and working on myself and incentivizing myself and prizes and programs and beating myself up and rewarding myself and finally proving to myself that I am capable and competent. But
How old were you when that happened? When was there a time period where, was it really adulthood?
yes,
Yeah.
I spent my entire childhood feeling inadequate and broken and dumb, and most of my young adulthood as well. I think it was only after the Ph.D. and smicha, which is within the past, I don't know, a couple of years, that I realized, holy cow, I'm really capable. That's really cool, right? But that means for years I was always doubting it because I had such a history of always messing it up. That history kind of proved to me that no, you're not capable. You're incompetent. So I think that when effectively managed, ADHD's assets could help a person thrive. They could really help you be people still remember when I would give over Talmudic expositions called chaburas, right? At Yeshiva, I would give over. Most people just open up the Talmud, right, and then they read out their thing, and maybe there's a handout with printed copies of the Hebrew. I would always give out. It would be multiple pages, right? There would be an outline, right, with corresponding numbers on where to find that corresponding passage in the Talmud, right, and its commentaries, and it was numbered. There were footnotes on the bottom to kind of explain any questions, right, and I would constantly keep people abreast of where I was in the presentation. It was just so clear and so spelled out because I needed it to be. Otherwise, I'd get so confused in my presentation that I would just get all messed up, right? But it was just, I think that the ADHD kind of forced this increase in clarity, and I think that was a benefit to everyone.
Thank you. I have a couple practical questions. We'll try to get to them all, but we're getting close to the end. Do you have any practical advice on how to help teach the concept of time to teenagers? Such as, for example, if a child says something will take 10 minutes, but then it takes 2 hours, how do you teach them how long 10 minutes really is? Any ideas for us?
It's a really good question. So I'll tell you what I do with my patients, which is whenever we make out lists, we kind of put in brackets next to it estimated time to completion. And then the first couple of times that we try that task, we'll time it. This is where we could do some reality testing to see how long it is, right? With children, right, who aren't going to be as self-motivated to do it just for the sake of knowing the actual accurate time, I think it could be with a prize, right? There could be an incentive. Like if you actually get it done in those 10 minutes, sweet, right? You get X prize or whatever it is that you want to come up with, right? But that idea of actually tracking it with them, meaning let them kind of estimate a time to completion, right? You'll track it. And then if they get it done in that time, yay. If not, then they've learned that actually may take more time. And you know what? This can be an amazing experience for you both to kind of work together and unpack, well, what kind of got in your way? And there's so many of these, like, what I call icebergs, right? Where, like, they thought they could do the task, but they didn't realize all of the things underneath they had to do. Like, they wanted to fix the lawnmower, but they didn't realize that they had gas, and the gas they had to go drive out and get, they couldn't find the jerry can or this and that. Like, or even the tools. They couldn't find where the wrench is. So then they remembered, oh, someone borrowed it and they had to go all the way down. So it's like all these iceberg tasks that you don't really notice, right? So again, so you could unpack it with them, right? And how do we kind of anticipate that kind of stuff? How could we plan together to kind of deal with that, you know? So I think being collaborative is a great way of doing that.
Thank you. We had a couple questions I want to make sure I answer here. Yes, this program, for those of you who joined late, it is being recorded and it will be posted on our No Shame on You YouTube channel. So you can just simply go to YouTube and search No Shame on You with the letter U, and it will be there. Not immediately, a few days to clean it up, and it will be there. Let's just end with this final question to see if there is anything interesting. Are there any new treatment styles on the horizon that are coming up to help support our children with ADHD?
It's a great question. There's STAND from Margaret Sibley at the University of Florida. There's I'm a big fan, obviously biased towards NYU's program. NYU's these great programs. I would highly recommend the books that each of these places have. The NYU book is called The Organized Child, and it comes with all these tips and tricks for how to kind of create that environment, right? That's more conducive for our children's success and really our own, right? And there's also programs I've seen like brain exercises to help with ADHD, but again, they're not ways to cure. There's no cure for ADHD. I want to make that very clear. There's no cure, and I don't think there ever will be a cure for ADHD. It's always going to be about effective ADHD management. So all of these treatments and books and medicines, everything should just be viewed as what it accurately really is, which is just another tool to help effectively manage the ADHD, but nothing will ever cure it.
Thank you. And thank you for those resources. I want to thank you and thank everyone for coming and joining us this evening. A huge thank you to ATT and Rabbi Muller for partnering with us. Also to Debbie Kardash, who has been a wonderful partner in this program. I put in the chat a link to a survey. If you could take a moment and please fill that out, it will help us make sure our programming is on the mark and also report back to our generous funders.